Well, hello there. I hope everyone is having a great Wednesday. Welcome to our monthly Facebook Live class. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Natasha Daniels. I created this Facebook group a while ago to help parents who are raising kids with anxiety or OCD. And I am the creator of atparentingsurvival.com, and I'm a child therapist, and I'm raising 3 kids with anxiety and OCD. So a little introduction for those of you that don't know me. We are voting on topics each month. That's kind of a new thing that we're doing. And you guys voted on the topic, how to help your kids who are scared to sleep. And that's not surprising that that topic won out, because that's a very common issue. So many of us are struggling with how to help our kids sleep, because if they are dealing with anxiety or OCD, sleep tends to be a big issue as well. It's kind of a big part of the annoying puzzle. So as we wait for people to join us, just so that I get into people's feed, I'll let you know a little bit about what's going on in the AT parenting survival world. So you guys also voted pretty high on how to spot a good OCD therapist. And so I will definitely include that. When I see a topic that's voted on a lot, you know, that it was almost neck and neck, I would say, for a long time, I will always include that in the next poll. So next month, these classes are always held the last Wednesday of every month, typically around this time. And so you can depend on that. Otherwise, I would let you know. And we'll always put a post where you guys will vote on the next topic. So today we're going to be talking about the thing that you voted on. And I got a lot of questions on this. I actually got so many that I decided that we're just going to basically do a Q&A, because it will take me the entire hour to go through all these questions. So if you have questions as we're going, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and hopefully I can answer your questions as I'm answering these. These questions that came up brought up some really good topics that are going to touch on everything I'd want to talk about. And so that will be helpful, I think, for everybody, because even if you didn't ask a question, I'm sure that a lot of these are relevant to you and they're going to pertain to your kids. But if not, or if you have something else, just leave a comment as we go and I'll answer it. If you can't stay for the full hour, don't worry about it, because I record these. Well, I don't really record them. Facebook records them, and they will be pinned to the top. I also take the recording and I put it on my YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch the video of it there if you want to as well. So welcome Wendy and Angie and Tiffany. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. So we're going to get started. I do want to let you know that I do have a free PDF. So I am very busy working on actually a sleep class that's coming out in a few weeks. And I'm going to have a free webinar on some of the really big common mistakes that parents make on sleep. But I created a free PDF on 15 of the most common reasons why kids are scared to sleep, because I really am big into finding the core fear. If you've heard anything that I've ever said, ever, I'm always talking about the core fear. It's so important to find out what's driving the behavior. And a lot of times with sleep, people will just assume, well, they're just having a hard time sleeping, Natasha. I mean, isn't that kind of obvious? Like, what kind of digging do I need to go into? And that's a mistake, because when we don't figure out what that core fear is, even around sleep, we miss a big piece of the puzzle, and often that's why we can't make any progress. So I have been doing therapy for almost 2 decades. I feel really old saying that. And I have accumulated all the top reasons that I've seen as far as why kids are scared to sleep. Some are super, super common, and some are less common, but are probably common in our world for raising kids with anxiety or OCD. So I left a link above so that, oops, it's good to actually turn off my iPad so it doesn't ding. So I left a link above so you can get the PDF. It's free, just download it. And then you can see, do your children have any of those issues? So it might be a good launching point to say, oh my gosh, I never thought about that, but maybe that's the issue. So I just want to mention that for those of you that have to leave early, because there is a list. There's a link above, and also there is a wait list for my class. And so definitely join that if you're even remotely interested in taking my online class, which will have videos for you to teach you worksheets for you and for your child, and actually videos for your kids to watch directly. I'm starting to do that more in my classes. People are liking that, where I teach you and then I take what I'm teaching you and I also teach your kids that in separate videos. So get on the wait list because you'll get a big discount the first week. And also I'm gonna give a secret bonus I'm not gonna tell anyone about that will be very good, only for those people that are on the wait list. So Sarah, it's so good to have you too. She said she's happy that I found my podcast and now live. That's awesome. Oh, Amy, thank you. She said I look so young. I really appreciate that. But I'm not. Tomorrow's my birthday. Can you believe that? And I'm going to be 47. I'm not even afraid to tell my age because we shouldn't be afraid to talk about how long we've lived. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to read these, and I'm just going to read the first name of the people because I will be putting this on Facebook, on YouTube, and so I want to respect people's privacy. But Crystal said, how do we get our kids to stop excessive reassurance around sleeping? My daughter asks a million questions, the same ones over and over before bed, regarding bad guys, death, what if I can't fall asleep? She thinks she has to pee about 10 times before bed too. And then she asks a couple of other questions. Is TV a good idea at bedtime to help fall asleep? And what about melatonin? So she kind of threw in a whole bunch right there. So, oh, Jen says that she has the same birthday. You, me, and Michael Jackson. I don't know who else is famous who has our birthday. So Crystal brings up a whole bunch of stuff. Bad guys, death, can't fall asleep, needing to pee. Those are actually some really common core fears. The peeing one is not a core fear, but if your child already has kind of a sensory motor OCD or an anxiety around peeing, that will show up at bedtime for sure. So a lot of times our kids' issues that they have throughout the day will show up at bedtime. And that's not surprising because bedtime is a quiet time. It's like when the brain has no distractions and it's dark and it's quiet. And then you're going to tell me to go to sleep for 8 hours. And it's kind of like a mini death to a lot of people who are anxious about losing control. You know, shutting my eyes and not being able to be hyper aware of my environment is really scary for very anxious or controlling people. And so that's why that happens. So, let's see, Katie said, for my son, it's always about ghostis. And that's so funny that you say ghostis. My son used to talk about ghostis too. My ghostis friend, he would say, but it was his friend and not something that he was scared of. And Shannon said, my son always says his tummy hurts before bed. Yeah, and I think a lot of times we'll see the somatic issues, the stomach aches, sometimes the headaches, needing to drink a lot, mainly the stomach aches because the anxiety is revving up. And so instead of calming down, the nervous system is hitting the false alarm and they're revving up for fight or flight. And so their cortisol, their adrenaline's pumping, and it can make you feel nauseous. And so I think that's why we see that a lot of the time. So with Crystal, I would say if your child's asking for excessive reassurance, you want to handle a lot of their common fears before you even get into the bedroom. And so you want to deal with a lot of these issues outside of bedtime, because bedtime is not the time to try to put band-aids on fears and anxieties, because because sleep is a vulnerable time and you're not gonna be able to process anything at that time. So you want to tackle those thoughts about bad guys and about death. And if she can't fall asleep, a lot of times when kids say they can't fall asleep, and definitely, as always, I can use my own kids as examples because having 3 kids with anxiety and OCD, I feel like I can relate to absolutely almost any issue that a child would have. And when my daughter says, I can't sleep, I'm worried I'm not gonna be able to sleep, I will say to her, you don't have to, just lay there and listen to your guided imagery. And that gives her permission to not worry about it. And sometimes later when we're not in sleep, I'll say, what's the worst thing that can happen if you don't sleep? And then she'll say, well, I'm gonna be so tired, I'm not gonna be able to function. Well, she doesn't use the word function because she's 7, but that's what she means. And I'll say, you know what? You'll survive it. So sometimes with the fear of sleep, we just want to get to them. We want them to accept that they can handle the worst case scenario. A lot of times with anxiety, we think that we need to fix it or tell them that it's okay and give them that reassurance. But instead, a lot of times it's just acceptance. Now with bad guys, I did make a kids YouTube video, and I don't know, Lynn, if you're here and you have time, if you can link it here, but I did a whole kids YouTube video on bad guys. And so you can watch that for your kids. This is the kind of work that we need to do outside of the bedroom. With TV, some kids are already in the habit of watching TV. Now, in a perfect world, I would say that we really don't want our kids to watch TV when they go to bed, because it is technically activating their brain. They are getting hooked into a story that's engaging. The light is activating their brain. And so, yeah, in a perfect world, TV is not your best thing. However, a lot of us are just trying to survive. And so I don't like to be an all or nothing person. I don't like to be, this is right, this is wrong in anything, because I'm super respectful that you know your child, you know your family. We all come from different philosophical perspectives in parenting. There's no right or wrong. There's just what's working for you and your child. So if you need the TV or you've already had it on, then that is okay. You can do what you can do. In an ideal world, you want to set up these habits early so that things like that don't happen. But I'll be honest, my 15-year-old, I can't control her anymore. She's almost 16, and she likes to have her TV on. It makes her feel like she's not alone. It makes her feel comfortable. She locks her door. So she doesn't have OCD, but she's doing a lot of anxiety accommodating, but she goes to sleep perfectly well. She goes to sleep feeling secure and safe, and she sleeps really well. And so I'm not going to touch that. Now, my two little ones, we don't do TV. There's no TV in their room, and they listen to guided imagery. I prefer guided imagery because I feel like it really helps. It's the intention of a good guided imagery is to put them to sleep. Now, one thing that I've done, and we'll talk about this in a second. Oh, thank you, Lynn. I really appreciate it. She linked the YouTube video that I was talking about. So if you have kids who are worried about bad guys, start with that. Start having a conversation about it. And I can't remember if I've done a podcast on bad guys, but it's a common one. So another thing that I've done recently with my daughter, actually, like as of recently, I mean yesterday, I recorded on her iPad my own guided imagery for her. And somebody had actually, a friend of mine had suggested that. And I thought, what a great idea. And so I've listened to enough of them that I was just all calm, and I like calmed her body down. I put her on the beach. I put her feet in the water. And then I put her feet in the sand. And then I had her go sit in a beach chair and lie back and put on some headphones and then listen to me talk. And then I told her all of these good things about her. And I used her first name. So her name is something else, but let's just pretend she's Jennifer. I try to protect my kids' names. So I was like, Jennifer is so brave. And Jennifer loves her art, and she's so good at art. And I just went through like 5 minutes of just all these positive things about her. And I spoke about what she would do in the future as if she's already done it, and all these good things that were happening to her. And she really liked it. And then she woke up in the middle of the night, and normally she wakes me up, and we'll talk about that later. She's been having a lot of sleep disturbance, just like physiologically, like she's just off. And she said, Mom, I just put your voice back on and it felt good. So for those of you that have kids that want to come and get you in the middle of the night or need you there, another option as you work towards empowering them to work on themselves is to have them listen to your voice. I thought that was actually pretty cool that worked last night. And then Crystal also asked about melatonin. I am supportive of whatever works for you. So if you don't want to use melatonin, you don't have to. I have seen pediatricians, my own pediatrician included, is supportive of melatonin. A small dose, like 2.5 milligrams. I think the kid dose is 5 milligrams, but talk to your doctor, because I'm not here to give medical advice, can help. Now, my son, who has OCD, he cannot shut off his brain. And he's just like, and without 2.5 milligrams of melatonin, this is a very tiny dose, he cannot go to sleep. And that is okay. And so I am supportive of melatonin. I don't see that as a crutch. I think some kids are just so activated that they need that. Not everybody does, though. Macy said, what to do when they come out of their room 15 times. I think we can all relate to that. To say they're scared of bad guys. See, this one comes up so much. It's my number one reason. I'll miss you, school in the morning. Wait, I'll miss you, school's in the morning, and whatever random thing, even if we've gone over these fears. I wouldn't say they're random. I would listen to what your kids are saying, because they're not random. It is helpful to start to see a pattern and a theme in what your kids are asking. I think that can be very helpful. So you want to tackle the bad guys, and that's a whole other episode, a whole other podcast episode. And so maybe I will do that if I haven't done that. I don't know if I've done that or not, but it's something to look at. And school in the morning, you want to look at what are they anxious about. So when they're telling you these things that they're nervous about, there's material there, there's information there that as a detective you want to gather. And it's a process. And I will say this, as far as sleep goes too, is that sleep is one of those things that will take time. They will take a lot of time, and it's okay to be patient. Well, it's not okay. You have to be patient, because sleep with anxiety and OCD will come and it will go. It will be easy to handle at times, and then it will be hard, depending on their hormones, depending on their developmental stage, depending on what is new, depending on transitions, depending on where their anxiety or OCD is at. There's so many elements that have nothing to do with you, that even if they know all their skills, sometimes our kids will have a hard time with that. Stacy said, Natasha, I have a question. Of course, my daughter's older. Wouldn't that be reassurance? Not sure in which aspect you're talking about. So you have to be a little bit more specific so I can figure out what you're talking about, because you want to help your kids develop green thoughts, or what I call green thoughts that help reframe their thinking. And so when it comes to anxiety, helping your child develop green thoughts is not reassurance. I think a lot of times in the world of OCD, we get so militant about no reassurance because it grows the OCD, that we also forget that most kids, almost every kid with OCD, has anxiety. And when it's about going to bed, more often than not, it's going to be about anxiety and not OCD. Not always, but most of the time. And so I think it would be really helpful to help a child reframe their thinking, and to think about, how am I safe, or how is school going to be okay tomorrow, and all of those things, so that they can talk themselves down. Sean says, can you please cover for younger kindergarten kids who do multiple midnight wake-ups, and how to get them back to bed when their separation anxiety is huge? Again, I do feel like the recording of your voice. No, Stacy, I don't think the recording of your voice would be reassurance if it's anxiety. So if your child just likes the comfort of your voice, it's kind of like a blankie, right? A blankie is comfortable and it's soothing. Listening to your voice is comforting and soothing, and it's actually speaking to their nervous system. Their brain is going to respond to that because you are their comfort. And it's a good step, even if they're a young adult, to have that comfort with them. I mean, they're going to listen to a stranger's voice, right? So why not yours? So I wouldn't think that would be bad at all. Teresa said, my daughter calls them her existential thoughts. When she can't sleep and closes her eyes, she starts thinking about dying. Okay, dying is on my list of my top 15. And so we want to tackle those things before they go to sleep. So, not just randomly, but during the day, like that's the thing that we want to work on. What's the scary part about dying? What does dying mean to her? A lot of times we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to rock the boat, but we really want to explore that, whether that's spiritually explore that, or just pragmatically explore that, or get her to a place where she's okay with understanding or facing her fears of death. And those are things that you're going to do outside of the office. I mean, outside of the bedroom and outside of the home. You might do it in the therapy office. These are long-term things, but at night, it's going to show you what those things are that need to be worked on. So we're not going to be able to go into all of those different fears, as far as the fear of bad guys, fear of death, fear of not being able to sleep, because those are in-depth conversations that you would work on with your child or young adult separate from sleep, if that makes sense. Okay, trying to think where I was. Okay, so multiple wake-ups, separation anxiety. So you want to work on separation anxiety separate too. And I have a million resources on separation anxiety. One day I'll do an online class on separation anxiety because it's so common, and emetophobia. Those are on my to-do list eventually. But having a recording of your voice could be helpful. But if your child can't even separate with you, like during the day, if you can't be in another room and your child can't handle it, or you can't go in the backyard without your child handling it, then you might want to do a challenge ladder for the day first. Sleep is always the last thing I tackle when someone comes to see me and they have multiple problems, because that's going to be the hardest issue. And if they can't do it during the day, they're definitely not going to be able to do it at night. So working on separation anxiety separate from that. And midtime wake-ups, sometimes if you have a plan, it really depends on where your child is at, because we're all in different places as far as the struggle of sleep. But I do like the recording of your voice. I think that could be really helpful. I also like to gamify it and have kids earn prizes and tickets for being able to go back into their bed. But you can't do that until you've given them all these coping mechanisms. And the coping mechanisms are the really important part. So, and today is a very big, brief overview. It's super hard in an hour Facebook Live to teach you all the ins and outs of every little skill to help your kids sleep. It's getting the big picture today of where the issues are and where to start. And really the way to start is to start exploring what is driving your child's fears and working on that outside of sleep. Alejandra said, my 10-year-old girl has been sleeping with me since her severe OCD onset in June of 2017. My husband has been sleeping in the guest room since then. The husband always gets the boot. Now that her OCD is better, we're working on getting her back to her room. We are starting the process by sleeping together in her room. She is in her own bed and me in the separate bed, but she has just started school on Monday and she has been avoiding to sleep in her room again. She says she is not scared of sleeping in her room, but she likes to sleep with me. Yeah, and I think that this depends on your philosophical perspective. And so when I was making the sleep class, I'd be very careful because there are some people that want to co-sleep and they're okay with co-sleeping, and that's part of their family culture and philosophy, and that's totally okay. If you don't want your child to sleep with you, and that's not your philosophical parenting style, but your child wants to sleep with you, then you have to inchworm them back. And so it's starting, and when school starts, I try not to rock the boat too much. I give it like a week or two, and I put everything on pause, and then I move forward. And so if, where was she before? Are you guys all sleeping in your room? Trying to figure out what you're talking about. But you would start with one little baby step. So if you guys were all in one room, and then you were in her room, and then you moved off of her bed and you were in the other bed, you know, you just say that that's the way it's going to be. I'll be in your room, but I'm not going to be in your bed because I want you to be able to feel good about yourself and sleep on your own. And this is how we build your skills. And then maybe you move the bed further away. And then maybe, you know, you take a mattress and you put it on the floor outside of her room. Maybe you don't need that many steps, and maybe you just inchworm a little bit. The idea for anyone who is wanting to have their child sleep independently is to inchworm it like you would when they were a baby. But you do it in a way that you address their fears first, because I think a lot of times people are, and I'll talk about this more in my webinar that will come out in a little while. I don't know the exact date yet, but people swoop in and they do things that are too, they're like putting the cart before the horse, or the horse before the cart. What is that expression? So they're doing things without doing the footwork. And so a lot of times they will just want their kids to sleep back in their bedroom, but they didn't address their core fears, or they didn't inchworm it small enough. And or they gave them a reward. If you can sleep in your own room, you can have this huge carrot. It's delicious and it's orange. And the kids fail because they haven't been given any tools to handle their stuff. So even though her OCD is better, maybe she's afraid, and it's possible that her thoughts would get to her again, or that she feels only safe if she's near you. So we really want to disprove that to show her that she's okay if you are not touching and you're in another bed in her room, and then you inch your way out. So that's how I would do it. It is slow. I mean, sleep is a slow go kind of process, but over time, I've seen it work. I've seen it work at my house. I've seen it work in my practice over and over again when there's a lot of good consistency and the child's fears or struggles are being addressed. So Andrea said, how to keep recommended bedtime routines and structure from being out of control rituals. So many counselors recommend a calming routine of some sort that's the same every night in order to signal to the brain that it's time to wind down and it's bedtime. But it seems for many kids with anxiety and or OCD, it's very easy for things involved in a bedtime routine to become ritualized to the point that the kids may spiral if that routine is shortened or altered in any way. Do any of you deal with that? Additionally, how do you keep the child from constantly adding new things to the routine because it'll help me sleep, but in reality, they're just stalling techniques? For starters, I would be very careful about a rigid routine with a child with anxiety or OCD. Now, anxiety routine is comfort, and so that routine is predictability, but you want to shake it up. So you don't want to always, you know, then I read, and then I kiss you twice, and then I cover your blanket, and then I pat you twice. We don't want to be specific like that. And then you want to shake it up. Sometimes maybe I'm going to, you know, put you in bed first, then I'm going to read. So change out the order once in a while. If your child has OCD, I'd be super careful about routines, because OCD is just waiting to develop new compulsions. And so if you do those things and you're very rigid, it will create a compulsion. And so you want to be flexible. So maybe the routine is, we sing a song before we're getting ready for bed, or and then we brush our teeth. But then the next day, maybe we just brush our teeth and we don't sing. Or the next day, I tuck you in and I kiss you. But watch your phrases and watch their phrases. And so if you have a child who's saying, Mom, you have to say, I love you too. And you're just saying, I love ya. And your child's saying, and too. Mom, say it again, I love you too. Those are those little OCD weeds popping up, even with an anxious child. And so you say, you don't control my voice. I'm going to say, I love ya. Today I'll say, I love ya. You never know what I'm going to say. You want to keep it very spontaneous, because otherwise it will create more and more rules. And all of a sudden you're growing the OCD, or you're sprouting OCD that wasn't there. We can't cause OCD, but we can definitely help it sprout up. And we don't want to do that. So hopefully that answers that. And then stalling tactics, I try to preempt them by getting everything ready. And so there is a little cup of water next to my kids' beds, because now they don't have to come out and ask for water. So I make them go to the bathroom, even if they don't have to, right before bed, and then we're done. Your bladder is empty. And so those kind of things can preempt a lot of coming in and out. And then if your child keeps coming in and out, one, you want to address the core fear of why, what's going on with them, what's so scary, even if they say nothing. And then two, once you've given them skills, and I keep saying that over and over again, because anything else I'm going to say is you have to work on the skills first, getting them to reframe their thinking, a lot of the stuff that's out of the scope of today, but working on those core fears of, the bad guys, or am I going to die, or, am I going to survive school tomorrow? All those things, right? We have to deal with those. And those are more of our anxiety questions in general. But when they're coming in and out, we want to deal with that. We want to make note of what they're saying. And then when I know I've already dealt with that with my kids, then we kind of gamify it. And it's like, if you can stay in your room, you can earn tickets. And so when I know they have skills and I know that we've worked on it, then I gamify it and I say, as long as you stay in your room, you can earn a ticket. It depends on where your child is at. Initially, it was, you can come out only twice and then you have to stay in there if it was really bad. Now it's just, you have to stay in your room, and on top of it, you have to be quiet, right? You don't have to go to sleep. You just have to be quiet and listen to your guided imagery. So it will be different for each kid. And Stacy said, so important to mix things up from someone who OCD surrounds around rigidity and perfection, very young. Yeah, you have to be careful, unfortunately, as a parent to a child with OCD. I mean, I am with my kids, because I can say something and it becomes a pattern, or I can do something and then it has to be done that way all the time. And we can do our part in not growing those. So that can be helpful. Okay, so that Veronica said, my 10-year-old daughter will sleep independently in the guest room on the same level as our room, but not in her own room because she can't see the door from her bunk bed. She needs the light on. She uses indigo dreams, meditation, and melatonin. Can you discuss whether or not this type of accommodation is helpful or harmful to her overall progress with anxiety? I think it's a spectrum. I think we all have to see where our child is at, and we don't want to go too far in one extreme or the other. So we don't want to over accommodate them, because if we over accommodate them and we wait for them to feel empowered enough to not sleep right on top of us, that day will never come. I have worked with people in their 20s who are still sleeping in their parents' beds because they're still waiting for that day to come. So, but yet I have other parents who will, put them in their room and they are not allowed to get out, and the child is like hyperventilating, breaking out in hives, or is throwing up. That's obviously too much. So it's finding that balance of where you can push your child. So if your child's at the point where they can sleep on their own, but they just need to see the door and they need to sleep in the guest bedroom and their light is on, and that's good, and they're sleeping well, that's where you start. And then maybe after a while, you might say, you might change it up. I don't have a problem with the light being on. I know a lot of people worry about the light activating the circadian rhythm, but to me, the amount of adrenaline and cortisol that's going to be pumping through that body when they're in the dark is equally bad. And so I typically don't have an issue with a lot of light in the very beginning. My kids, my son, he would sleep in bright light. His room light would be on, but he would sleep well because he felt safe. He doesn't do that anymore. So everything that we do is we're moving in the step in the right direction. And so it's not, this is the end result. This is where we're at forever. It's a process. And the ultimate goal is we want our kids to feel safe and we want them to feel secure so they can go to bed, but we want it to be healthy. We want it to be adaptable. We want them to be independent, depending on your philosophical stance. And so that might look different for each one of us, what independence looks like. For some of you, it might be co-sleeping, but them not holding your hand or breathing right on top of you or having a panic attack right next to you. For others of us, it might be them sleeping independently in their room, going to bed, getting a tuck in, and then going to sleep and not waking up. That might look like independence. And so we have to be respectful of everybody and where they want to head, but knowing what your ultimate goal is and inchworming your way there is what we're talking about, whatever that will look like for you. Okay, so Aaron said, a preteen kid with moral OCD, scared to sleep sometimes because someone might kill him, break in, ask where the dog is. We ask him directly, what do you want to do about this thought? Or is this fear true? His therapist tells us to do that. My question is, best approach to take with this? For starters, Aaron, I wonder if that's OCD or I wonder if that's anxiety, because those kind of sound like anxiety questions. Someone might kill him, like a bad guy. Is that what you mean? Or break in, or where's the dog? Because the dog should be protecting him. And if the dog's gone, then a bad guy killed the dog. I don't know where his thoughts are, but that's what I would think. And so I would have him generate and obviously follow his therapist's advice, because the therapist knows you guys and knows him. Not knowing your son, I would think that I would go through his red thoughts and his green thoughts about that thing. So who do you think would kill you? You know, and I would explore that. I wouldn't do that with OCD. So if someone was having an intrusive thought, like my son in the past would have intrusive thoughts about images, like weird images that would get stuck in his head, like bad guys, but like at one point he was scared of, I told him about The Boy Who Cried Wolf, because I was trying to do like a parenting moment. I was trying to teach him. And we talked about the boy that cried wolf. Hey, you want to be honest, because this is what happened to the boy that cried wolf. And immediately he got afraid of wolves. I was like, oh my gosh. And it stuck in his head, and we can't prevent this stuff from happening. Like, you just breathe wrong and now it's like an intrusive thought. And so he couldn't stop seeing the wolf. It wasn't an anxiety because he knew, he's 9. He knew it was a story. He knew it was fake. It wasn't worth talking to him any longer and saying, you know, the wolf, that's a made up story. It didn't matter. He could have been 25. He got this image in his head and he couldn't get it out. And so when he went to bed at night, he'd get scared because he's like, I'm seeing that image in my head. That was pure OCD. Images get stuck in kids' heads. When you have a kid who has OCD but is worried about their safety, like bad guys, or where's the dog, or what was the other one? Will they kill him? Those to me sound like anxiety thoughts. And so I would work through, what are your green thoughts for that? Why are we safe in this house? We can't spoon feed it to them, because if we do, then it's not going to be authentic. It's not going to stick with them. But we want them to start telling themselves why they're safe in this house. So that's what I would do. And then when my kids come out, because my kids have a general fear of bad guys, I think most of our kids probably do. That's a really common one. So I'll give you an example. They come out of their room and they might say, actually, this happens very frequently. My son said, Mom, I'm scared. And then I say, what do you need to tell yourself? Which is actually very similar to yours. But he already knows the green thoughts. And so he will say, I'm worried. He'll say, we are all safe in this house. Our doors are locked. A bad guy can't reach my window. Nobody can get to my bedroom on the 2nd floor. No one's going to put up a ladder. He'll repeat all the green thoughts that we've gone over. And then he's calm and he goes to bed. So that's what I would recommend. I have a couple of questions from you guys that I'm not reading, so let me get to those really quick. Jennifer said, my child is 12 with anxiety, and about a month ago, he finally started sleeping in his own bed, but he has to have 2 lights on and a TV on, and even then, he takes a very long time to fall asleep. Sometimes he doesn't fall asleep till a few hours before he has to wake up. I give him melatonin and take away his phone at night, but he still has trouble falling asleep. I would still explore, and I don't know, Jennifer, if you're in therapy, but so either you or the therapist or both of you, I would explore, obviously his core fears are not being addressed because he's in fight or flight mode still. And so he's definitely nervous. And when you see that, when you're seeing that hyper arousal still, the core fear has not been conquered. And we can't sometimes conquer it completely. I mean, even me as a recovering anxious child, when it's dark and my husband's traveling, I get nervous. I still do. And I turn my light on in my bathroom. You know, it's just genetically in my bones. But I can calm myself down and be like, you're safe. Don't worry about it. Just go to sleep. Focus on this. But his core fears are not being totally addressed. So I would explore that and figure out what he's nervous about and what he can tell himself, and practice that. And then guided imagery to you. Guided imagery. I don't know why I can't speak today. I think I'm really tired. Guided imagery is very, very key to sleep. People in my practice a lot of times just kind of like shrug that part off when I'm trying to teach them about sleep. And when people come in over and over again and the sleep issues are not getting better after I've worked with them for a few sessions, I'll say, are you guys doing the guided imagery? And always they say, no, we're not doing that part. That is a key part, because you need to train the brain to focus on something else once they've done their green thoughts and they've thought of other things. So that's something to work on as well. Hold on a second. Jerry said, my OCD anxiety 9-year-old will wake up really early and read in her room. While it isn't a big deal, she is falling back asleep and having trouble waking up at a normal time a few hours later. Not sure how to address this. Just usually ask her to lay back down and try to sleep, and usually works. Just a phase. It could be just a phase. Sleep is so finicky. It's so rough. It's nice that she's finding a way to calm herself down and then go back to bed. So I would do a wait and see thing, because it is actually nice that she is, you know, waking up, taking care of herself, and then going back to bed. I would just caution if she's really like wanting to read a book, if she's really excited about reading a book, or is she reading the book because she's just trying to get herself to calm down, reset, and go to sleep. If she loves the book, then I might explore that further, because she might wake up. We all wake up multiple times a night, but is she rolling around and then being like, oh, it'd be really cool to read my book right now? But if she's just reading it to go to sleep, I would see. And you don't want to take away the coping mechanism too early, because then it might be worse. She might be waking you up. She may not be able to go to sleep. She might be getting nervous. So I think that's one of those things to observe and see what's going to happen. And Nazish said, my 8-year-old child with sensory issues shares a room with her 7-year-old sister. They sleep side by side. She says she's scared of the dark. We leave the lights on in the room, but she still wakes up around 1:30 and comes into our room every single night. And that might be something to practice. My kids were wake up in the middle of the night kind of kids for a long time. My 7-year-old still does that, but she doesn't wake me up anymore, because she's really having a lot of like physiological issues, because she's woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning since she was like an infant. And so that is a lot more of like just something is going on with her physiological circadian rhythm is not working. I have no idea. But you can practice. So my son is a good example of this, because he would do that. He would have a bad dream, or he would get nervous and he would wake me up, and we would practice. And so during the day, I would have him turn the light on, and I'd say, when you wake up and you have a bad dream or you feel scared, what are you going to do? And he's like, I turn my light on, I check my room, I remind myself about my green thoughts, I put Lori Light back on, that's his guided imagery that he likes, and I listen to her, and then I go back to sleep. And that doesn't work instantly, but you practice this. And then once he got it going, I said, if you can do that, you can earn a ticket. I'm very big in behavior modification for anxiety and OCD, because I think especially around sleep, it encourages them, because otherwise it just feels better to just sleep right on top of you. Like, why can't they do that? So we need a little motivation to do something that's going to make them uncomfortable. So I would work on that. Ashley said, how do you deal with a core fear that is really just being afraid of that fear itself? I don't know if it's fear itself. So I don't know if that's, I feel like there's something deeper than that. There's always a core fear. It could be that I'm afraid I'm going to be afraid, right? And maybe that's what you're talking about, Ashley. So it could be, I'm afraid I'm going to have a panic attack. So I'm panicking about panic. Or I'm afraid you guys are going to go to sleep and then I'm going to get scared. But I think there's still something to go further down into. And then the fear that panic is going to come. Oh, see, exactly. So yeah, I think sometimes kids who are kids who have had panic attacks worry at nighttime that they're going to lose control and they're going to have a panic. So The first thing is acceptance. Like, I can't tell who wrote that. It just says replying to Ashley. So I am sorry for whoever wrote that, but that's an awesome response. Yes, because I think it is acceptance. You know what? Panic attacks. And I have a kid's YouTube video on panic attacks. I have a podcast on panic attacks. If you ever need any resources and you're not sure if I have it, just go to my website at atparentingsurvival.com. If you go all the way to the bottom, there's a search button. You can type in panic and boom, everything I've ever done on panic will be there. I've been doing it for 5 years, so I have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of free resources, whether it's a podcast, an article, or a kid's YouTube video for you. So check that out. Catherine said, our 11-year-old will not sleep in his room unless his dad or I are with him. His constant fear is that someone will break into our home and kill us or kidnap him. All core fears that are very common, right? He has these fears in part due to, a robbery in our small town of the local bank and a variety store. These robberies happened 6 years and 1 year ago, respectively. Regardless of what we do, I try and assure him he's safe. He only sleeps if he's in our bed with us, or one of us is in his bed with him. Yeah, so I would continue to work on that with him because it wasn't a home robbery. A lot of times I will talk to kids and I will say, depending on their age and their level of anxiety, I will talk about the likelihood of someone breaking in. And so it depends on your child, whether you can have a conversation like this. But I'll often say, when do you think the most common time is for people to break into people's homes? And kids will always say at nighttime. And I'll say that's actually not true. It's more likely to happen during the day when people are on vacation or they're at work. They make sure the house is empty. If they see an alarm sticker in your front yard, they don't like that. They don't want to meet you. They just want your TV. So sometimes just normalizing it, right? They didn't rob your house. They robbed a store that has money. And so sometimes it takes a while, but reframing those thoughts can be very helpful. And maybe having him watch the kids' YouTube video can help too. So, and Ashley said, yes, panicking about the panic. So that's what panic attacks are. They're really not panic attacks until you panic about it, right? And so working on the panic attacks before nighttime, a lot of times it's working on these issues during the day, and it impacts sleep. And so sometimes we'll see the symptoms at night, but then it's an indication of what we need to focus on during the day. Okay, so let me get to some of these as well. And then Erin also said that she as a parent struggles to sleep because she feels conditioned to not sleep. So she's waiting for her son to sleep. He doesn't know this, he's in his room. How does she stop this? And I would say go to sleep. I get you. I was like that a few years ago. I felt almost anxious to go to bed because I was just waiting for someone to call me. And finally, I was like, I'm going to catch my sleep when I can. And when we believe that our kids got it and we act that way, it definitely helps. Even if your son doesn't know that you're doing that, just going about your business and going to sleep like you normally would, and then having him wake you up can just normalize the whole family and sets a stage of we're getting back on track. And so, yes, you might be woken up and that is super annoying. I get that. But I would try to get back into your normal pattern. 1, it's good self-care. And 2, you're missing out on some sleep that maybe you can get on the front end, if he wakes you up a little bit later, would be my thought. And Nancy said, my son tries to understand how we fall asleep. That's a trap. Nancy, don't answer it. It's a trap. You have to be careful with those kind of questions. My son is very much like a philosophical thinker too, and he can rope you in. But if you start talking about it, then they're going to turn around and be like, but I don't know if I know how to do that. I don't even know if I know how to sleep. Because our kids are such deep, big thinkers that they overthink sleep. And that's why when you tell them, you don't have to worry about it. Your body's got this. Your body pees and poops and breathes and your heart beats without you thinking. It also will sleep. And even if you don't know how to sleep, eventually your body will be like, we're shutting this all down. So a lot of times I'll tell kids that so that they can feel like the burden is not on them. Be careful how far down the rabbit hole you go with explanations with anxious kids or kids with OCD, because it's a trap. Most of the time it's a trap. My son, he loves things that he's afraid of. And so he'll often talk about, Mom, do you know that there are ants that are, I forgot what they're called. He's like studying ants. And if you get into a deep conversation with him, bullet ants. He talks about bullet ants because when they bite you, it hurts just like a bullet. That's a trap. I'm not going to talk to him about bullet ants because it's going to file in his brain and he's going to use that against himself later. So I think the same thing with sleep. Okay. Dina said, I have felt so alone dealing with our daughter's anxiety at bedtime. I'm so thankful to catch your video today. Is there a lot more information on helping kids work through this on your website? I do have a podcast on sleep, and I think I have a couple of podcasts, and I do have a kids YouTube video, I think, on sleep. I am creating this online class that is very comprehensive, and so I'm very excited about it. And that's why I'm tired, actually, because I was up late last night finishing the last video. So you can get on my wait list, and that's actually going to walk people through. It's basically everything I do in about 4 therapy sessions when people come and see me on sleep, and I just did videos for it. It's actually really easy for me to take what I learned, like what I do and what I say in my therapy sessions, and just make videos, because I'm more of a teacher with kids that I work with than a therapist. I kind of see my role as more like teaching the parent and teaching the child. And then the videos for the kids are literally exactly what I say to kids in my therapy office. So that will be a resource for you guys as well. Chadley said, every night my 7-year-old wants to fall asleep with me, never to him saying he will have scary dreams. Wants to fall asleep with me, never to him. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. He wants you to fall asleep with him because he doesn't want to have scary dreams. And a lot of times kids will want reassurance where they'll say, tell me that I'm not going to have a scary dream, or, tell me that I'm going to be okay. And we don't want to spoon feed that. And I don't know if that's necessarily what you were actually saying, Chadley, but what can I say to soothe his fears? You want them to come up with their own thoughts, and that can be hard at first. So you help them develop those. What can you do if you have a bad dream? And so then he can come up with his idea. And sometimes I will talk to kids and I'll say, think of something, either pay attention to the guided imagery that you are hopefully listening to, or create your own world in your head. And so if you go to bed thinking of that, you're more likely to have good dreams. And if you have a bad dream, you wake up, you turn the light on, you look around the room, you realize it was just a dream, and then you go to your world. I do have a kids YouTube video on creating your world, and that is something that you guys can watch, because creating a world in your head can be really helpful. So for a while, my daughter had a Candyland world, and my oldest daughter for a long time had like a pet world. And whenever they woke up in the middle of the night, I'd say, go back to your world. And they would go to sleep with their world. And that's actually something that you can do. You can record yourself talking. You know how we talked about in the beginning of this class, for those of you that were still here, about guided imagery. And like, you can actually create their world in their head together, and then you can do the audio of it so that when they're having a bad dream, they can press play and they can listen to that again. So that can be really helpful. Stacy said, my daughter, just to give you one-word answers, like it's all good or I don't do this. Yeah, kids can be really, really difficult. And even young adults even more so, actually, I think. Elizabeth said, how do you help an 8-year-old to turn off his worry brain? He worries about death. Do you see a trend here? Sickness at bedtime. Sickness is another one on my list. How do you help a child fall asleep by themselves? Whenever we even bring up the idea of him falling asleep by himself, even during the day, he spirals. That tells you, Elizabeth, that that's too far of a stretch. And so it's baby steps. Everything with sleep are baby steps. And so it may not be getting him to go to sleep by himself. It might be you in the room and him self-soothing. We inchworm our way out. So it might be if you're like petting his hair and his back and he's getting all that, it might be you do that for a few minutes and then you stop the physical contact while you're still sitting there. That's a baby step, because then they're not dependent on falling asleep to this rhythmic pattern, where you're rubbing their back. They are falling asleep without that contact. So no matter where you are in your sleep struggle, you want to figure out how you can take a small step back. So if it's laying with them and rubbing their head, then maybe you sit up and you rub their head. And you do that for a while until it seems totally okay. And then you move back further and maybe you rub them for a few minutes and then you just sit there. And then maybe after that you sit below their bed. And then maybe after that you get into the door frame. So it's small steps. When he sees all or nothing, he probably panics because he's not ready for that. Stephanie said, my 11-year-old son's intrusive thoughts only happen right before bed or while he's trying to fall asleep. are his compulsions. So he has this scary thought, and then he needs to tell us or ask for reassurance. Since seeing a therapist, we now tell him, I'm sorry, but we can't answer your thought bully. Sometimes he is fine with this, just saying that, so I feel like that's still a compulsion. What kind of coping tools we introduce him to deal with anxiety when the thought sets in? When he was taking melatonin, he would fall asleep and not have thoughts. His therapist told us not to use it as anymore because it's just a Band-Aid. What do you think about using melatonin? And then, so that, we already covered the melatonin, but I would like to say, be careful and see if it's an intrusive thought, because it really depends on, and thank you, Lynn, for linking something else that's very helpful. So a lot of times people will think it's intrusive thoughts because they're having an upsetting thought that's scary, and then they're asking you if they're safe. And I don't see that as OCD necessarily. Now, if I had a child that called out and said, Mom, are you sure my bed is clean? Or, Mom, I had a thought that I was smoking today, but I didn't smoke. Am I a bad kid? Like, if it's totally related to their OCD theme, then yeah, it's OCD. But if they're shouting out and they're saying, Mom, are you still there? And you're like, yeah. Mom, did you lock the doors? Yeah. They're probably dealing with an anxiety thing. And you want to teach him, because I don't talk to kids with anxiety and OCD the same way. So if I had a kid who had anxiety and they were shouting out, and by the way, kids can have anxiety and OCD, and I've said that before, and so they can either show up. So you have to be really good at differentiating. But I would want to make sure that he has the tools. So if my child said, Mom, are you sure my bed is clean? Then I might say, I'm not talking to your O cloud, or I'm not talking to your bully. I'm trying to think what you just called it. But if they say, Mom, do you think the doors are locked? I would say something like, well, what do you need to tell yourself? That would be more of my response for anxiety. Because with OCD, I don't want the child to talk to OCD either. Like, none of us should be talking to your OCD. It's just like, yeah, my bed's really dirty. It's full of germs. Okay, let's go to bed. I'd want to poke back at it. But if it's anxiety, I actually do want to do some self-reassurance. I might say, I know all the doors are locked. I know we are safe in this house. So you have to kind of be careful about which one it is. Lena said, my son wakes up at night either from a bad dream or because he is scared. Then he tries to get into my bed. If I take him back to his bed and don't sleep in his room, he'll either not fall back asleep or come back again or wake up again scared. School starts so early and everyone is tired in the morning. Yeah, and I think a lot of us deal with that. That is so, so hard. So I would say kind of the stuff I've already talked about. We want to talk about it during the day. So, because you can't process at night. You're tired, they're tired, it's not going to work out. But you just say, when you have a bad dream, what can you do? And we kind of already went through this, so I won't go into it. But I think, teaching them to turn their light on. It's funny because I trained my 9-year-old to do that a couple of years ago, maybe like a year ago. And then I heard him training his sister because they have Jack and Jill bedrooms. And so when one can't sleep, the other one is impacted, which is really annoying. And so he was training her. He's like, look, you don't have to wake Mom up when you have a bad dream. Just turn your light on, look around, see if there's any bad guys, reset your brain because your brain is still in dreamland, and then put on your guided imagery and go back to bed. And she started to do that. It took a while. It took probably about 4 months, but I just love that he eventually got those skills and he was teaching it to her. So teach your kids, it will take time. I have one more question and then we're going to wrap up. Elena said that her child wakes up early and does not go back to sleep starting around 4:30 in the morning. I think his anxious brain kicks in and compulsions start. Yeah, and that's why it's really helpful if you have guided imagery where they can either press a button and turn it back on or have something available for them to reset their brain and go back to sleep. So you can work on what that plan would be, and then you talk to your child and you say, this is our plan. This is what you can do to calm your brain and go back to bed. So I know that didn't cover everything. I know there are so many questions around sleep. Sleep is a big, big topic. So if you are in the throes of a lot of sleep struggles, get on my wait list so that you can check out my sleep class, or even get notified of the webinar because that will be coming out and you won't miss it. Definitely look at my PDF because it might give you some ideas of what you're missing regarding that. And I will probably come on and talk about my sleep class like next week or the week after when it's available. And I'm sorry, Audrey, I didn't get to your question, but I'm wrapping up, but I will answer it when I get off. If you guys have other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments and I will be able to get back to them. And this replay will be pinned to the top, and it will also be on YouTube so that you can catch it there as well. I'll be back every month, the last Wednesday of every month, to do another Facebook Live class. If you like these classes, I do this every single week with my wonderful AT parenting community. I see a lot of the AT parenting community people here, and we are a tight-knit group of people where we get to know each other really well, and we have these classes every single Friday. So you can check that out at atparentingcommunity.com if you want more resources, and it's good to get the ongoing support. So I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Don't forget to find the sparkle in everything you do, and I will talk to you again next month.
Hi, I'm a mum of a daughter with OCD. I live in South Africa, and it's a country that doesn't have a lot of resources for children's mental health and specifically OCD. I really was at my wit's end on how I'm going to support my child, how I'm going to do ERP, how I'm just basically going to parent a daughter with OCD in a country that has little to no resources.
And at times it got just debilitating for us as a family, and I was super lonely. People weren't listening. I didn't have any support.
The AT community has been an absolute lifesaver. Natasha has been instrumental in the past few months in helping us set up ERP challenges, going through them step by step, being supportive each and every step of the way.
Joining the AT parenting community has been one of the best things I could have done for me and my family.
Natasha has built this community and it is exceptional.
I've learned so much. The support is fantastic. It's just been life-changing for my daughter.
It's so nice to be able to ask her live questions in office hours. She's there, she responds. Her live videos every week where she asks us what we need her to talk about. Also her forums, again, where you can ask questions. She's on there all the time. She is very present. The resources she's provided, the worksheets, there are so many things in this AT parenting community that are beneficial.
Natasha gives you so much of her time and her expertise. She's there to answer your questions, so it's such a personal way of getting help and support when it's much needed.
Personally, the community has helped me because I feel like I needed my support.
And then you have the added bonus of this fantastic community of parents who are going through such similar things, and suddenly you're empowered and have ways of accessing help and making a real difference to your family.
And also just the support of all the other moms and dads. It's really good. You know, we laugh together, we cry together, we fail together, we succeed together, and everybody gets it. Everybody gets it, and it's such a nice community to be with, and I hope you join us. You won't be disappointed. Try it out.